Welcome back to Off the Pitch, the podcast where we chat with individuals working within and shaping the game of soccer from off the pitch. In this episode, we're joined by none other than Peter Moore. Now, if you're familiar with Peter's name, you might know a bit about how impressive his career has been, but if you're not familiar with him, then you're in for a real treat. Peter walked David and I through his entire career so far. Having started out his working career as a physical education teacher in Wales, Peter has gone on to hold extremely impressive roles at companies such as EA Sports, Microsoft, Sega, and most notably, he was the CEO of Liverpool during their recent run, having won the Champions League and Premier League. This episode is a true masterclass in how to navigate your career, with Peter dropping a lot of knowledge, insights and stories along his journey and how it can impact those looking to replicate some of the same success today. These days, Peter is spending his time building his own club down in Santa Barbara, where his club Santa Barbara Sky will be one of USL's newest expansion clubs coming in next season. This episode is truly a gem, and without further ado, let's get into it. All right. Good morning, Peter. Welcome onto the podcast.
Good morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Well, Peter, look, of course, we already knew who you were and knew a solid, amount about you. And obviously I've done our research now, but for the select few who might be listening to this, who have maybe never heard of you or have heard of you, but don't know beyond a couple of your roles, would you mind just as quickly or as detailed as you want to go through, give us a run through of kind of your journey, from early life up to running through your career to where you're at now?
Born and bred in Liverpool, grew up in a pub. My dad had a pub, moved us in the mid-60s to Wrexham, just outside of Wrexham, where he got a pub that was a little less dramatic than the pub we had in Liverpool as regards what would go on each night. And that's kind of where my formative years as a teenager and as a player and ultimately being a physical education teacher. I went to PE college in Staffordshire in England, Madeley College of Physical Education. Got a job in North Wales in Llangollen and taught there for 5 years. But each summer I would come here to America and coached in the Midwest, in and around Cleveland and Greater Ohio, and got a real taste for American life. And during that period of time, the UK was a tough place to grow up and to be successful. And I think my personality and my personal ambitions, lent more to what I saw in America, the sense of optimism and anybody can do anything. And during that time, if you got a Scouse accent, you're kind of looked down upon a little bit. And my accent is long gone, but I came here and an English accent was something that people revered. So I leveraged that enormously, pretty quickly. Needed a real job real quick and started work for Patrick Football Boots and selling shoes, Patrick Boots and apparel and balls. Kevin Keegan, Michel Platini, the great players that Patrick had under contract, and was a sales rep, became the sales manager, and eventually became president of Patrick USA and ran the North American business. Got spotted by Reebok, moved from the Bay Area where I was living by then with my family and moved to Boston and helped Reebok not only get going in soccer, but quickly was promoted through the ranks to run global sports and was 9 years in Reebok, right in the middle of the sneaker wars against Nike and Adidas and Puma in those days. And interestingly, in those days, those big brands have still really not got into soccer to the level they're at now. And so it's more Lotto and Diadora, Gola. I mean, just these brands, the authentic football boot brands. Got a call, and by now I'm 44 years of age, got a call from executive recruiter. Reebok was really struggling and it was tough. It was tough duty going up against Nike in the 90s. What do you know about video games? And the answer was pretty much nothing. But Sega was looking for a head of marketing, for a chief marketing officer for Sega of America, in advance of launching what became the Sega Dreamcast. And in those days, video games were still boys in their bedrooms. The consoles had not developed. Online wasn't there yet. And so it was a phase you went through. So the theory being if you could market sneakers to teenage boys, you could market video games to teenage boys. And so very fortuitously, that was the situation then. And I was deemed the ideal candidate for the job. Within 3 months, I'm president of Sega. My boss resigned and moved on. And my Japanese overlords decided I was already ready to step in as president of Sega America. And we launched the Dreamcast, the first online console, albeit through dial-up. We kicked off online gaming on the console. Very quickly, so 5 years at Sega in San Francisco, and got a call from Microsoft. We've got the Xbox going, but we've got a new project for the next console, and we need somebody to an upfront personality, if you will, at Microsoft, which I loved being there, but was a lot of engineers that were not equipped to stand on stage and go from, and I'm going from the sneaker wars to the console wars. And so I moved up with the family up to Seattle, and we launched the Xbox 360 and really got Xbox Live going. And I was head of Xbox during that period, and had a wonderful time. I didn't appreciate the weather up in Seattle, but certainly appreciated the opportunity to be part of a multi-billion-dollar operation and what has become a major part of Microsoft's business as we look at it today. Got another call from an executive recruiter once again, and I always remember it's time to come home. And EA was looking for a president of EA Sports, and my sports background and my video game background made me the ideal candidate. And by then, I'd already was well known, being on stage at E3, and so I was a bit of a catch for EA. Moved back to the Bay Area and was president of EA Sports for 4 years until 2011. And from 2011 onwards, I became Chief Operating Officer of Electronic Arts of EA. But another call from an executive recruiter in the summer of 2016, would you ever move back to the UK? I remember looking out the window, the sun was shining. By this time, I'd lived in the States for 35 odd, maybe even 40 years. And heck no. But what if it was to be CEO of Liverpool Football Club? And so that gave me pause for thought, and it took a few months to figure out whether this was the right move for me to go back. Not easy going back after you've been away since 1981. But obviously a very tempting opportunity, particularly Jurgen Klopp had come in that year, and they really needed somebody to run the business of football on the ground in Liverpool to support the on the pitch activities, which were clearly going to be, as they were, turned out very dramatic with what Jurgen was building. So moved with my wife, California girl. By this time, I'd remarried, and for 4 years, just under 4 years, we were in Liverpool and became champions of everything and everywhere. I'd never run a football club in my life. What do I know? But it's business, and being a lad from Liverpool, it gave me that advantage of understanding what the fans want. Massive global football club. It's only when you're in the inside you can figure out the hundreds of millions of people that just not follow the club but love the club and everything that it stands for. And then came back into California and moved to Santa Barbara. My wife and I have 6 kids between us, and she had lived in Santa Barbara in a previous life. She's a yoga teacher and loves Santa Barbara, so we arrived there. And pretty quickly, USL figured out that the former CEO of Liverpool Football Club was now in Santa Barbara, a market that they badly wanted to put a stake in and develop as the tentpole for the West Coast. And so Justin Papadakis, Dan Holman from the league office in Tampa flew out, and we started on this journey that's still ongoing of building a football club in Santa Barbara. Big soccer community, say the least, for a lot of reasons. And it's ongoing, and I'm sure we'll talk in more detail about that. But I'm 2 weeks from being 70 years of age. That's my life in, I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe you fit it all in that 5 minutes.
There's a lot more detail behind that, but yeah, it's the abridged version.
No, and we'll pull certain pieces of it apart, because there's not a single piece of it I want to
Yeah.
gloss over in any way. But I would love, before we really dive in to all of those different milestones and things, I want to spend some time from a personal side, learning a bit beyond just a career and more sort of, I don't know if it's philosophy of navigating life and career, but you'd mentioned right at the beginning that your first job, let's say, was being a PE teacher.
Yeah.
And you were a PE teacher, if my math serves me correctly, maybe until you were about 25, 26. Um,
Uh, 26. Yeah.
I think today's world, 25, 26 year olds, because of social media, especially, and I think I can't speak for David, but probably myself included, often feel like we're behind. Because we can compare lives to what people show
Yeah.
on social media, let's say, especially. It's not really their lives, but you always see where other people are at your age and they're so far ahead or they're achieving this. And if you're ambitious, even if you're doing well, you'll always think you're 2 steps behind. But I think to hear from you, and this isn't to look down upon the job of PE teacher at all, but to know that at 25, 26, you were a PE teacher in Wales.
Yeah.
And 45 years later, you've achieved everything that you have achieved, which is, words can't even describe how impressive it is. What advice would you have for anyone that is around 25, 26 these days that feels like they're behind and have no idea what is ahead of them? But from your experience, so much can come when you put your head down and take the risks.
Yeah, I think for me, look, when I came to this country, so let's 1981, I come to this country, I'm playing soccer, I'm coaching soccer, I'm actually working for CYSA on not on the side, but as on the weekend. I needed to make money, and so I'm literally making $5 an hour, and I'm married, I've got a child by then, and you've got to. It's not about you anymore, and so getting a real job, as I called it at the time, of selling soccer shoes, football boots, soccer shoes, was key. And what never sold a thing in my life. But the thing you have to remember, every stage of your life, you take something from it and you build upon it. So I always wanted to be a PE teacher. And it's funny, you reflect back on that now. I might still be a PE teacher, like 99% of the guys I went to physical education college with, who I still follow. This is the great thing about social media. There's a lot of negatives. That we have a Facebook page with all of us on, and we all look old. And I mean, it's just like, and we go, is that you? And because your frame of reference is some fresh-faced 22-year-old you've never seen since. And then we're all 69, 70, 71. But you take from that, PE. So when I came to this country and I was struggling and I need that real job, I go, okay, what have I got? You look in the mirror. I remember doing this. All right, what have I got? Born in Liverpool, so I've got a Liverpudlian personality, gregarious, cocky, overconfident, blah blah blah. Everything about Scousers that I've carried with me all my life. My accent is gone. I go back a lot, obviously, but I'm a Liverpudlian. I'm a Scouser, and so we have that little cheeky cockiness where we walk into a room. We're not far from shy, and so you carry that. Secondly, I lived in a pub. I grew up in a pub. So when I was 11 or 12, my dad let me open up for him at 5:30, and I would stay behind the bar because just the locals would come in, and I would serve the locals. I'm freaking 12 years of age. And until 8 o'clock, he would come downstairs and he would take over, and I go up and do my homework. So, but you learn these. At 12, I'm dealing with adults. I'm taking money. I'm still pounds, shillings, and pence. I'm doing math on a cash register that is, if you explained it to somebody today, they go, how do you even do that with 20 shillings, 12 pence, and you're delivering, and a pint is 1 shilling and tuppence halfpenny. But it teaches you things. And I'm managing adults, and so I'm growing up. And then, a physical education teacher, which I idolized my PE teacher in grammar school in Wrexham, and I wanted to be him. So I go to 4 years of physical education at Madeley, and came and started teaching in North Wales. the only thing that really made me look abroad was that my head of department wasn't going anywhere. He just wasn't going anywhere. And so he was a blocker, what's known as a blocker to me. And I was ambitious and I wanted to be better than him. But he was getting in the way. And it's teaching. So he's not retiring. He's very happy, sat in the gym all day and every day, pulling down his salary and then ultimately his pension. And I started to look elsewhere and not only look elsewhere geographically, America, but also think, I love teaching, but I'm a PE teacher. They won't let me do real teaching. I'm the tracksuit boy, as I was known. And just, I wanted to, my ambitions were greater. You come to America, you look in the mirror, Liverpool, grew up in a pub. Physical education is about getting 35 boys 8 times a day to do something they really don't want to do. Go out in the snow, play rugby, play football, whatever, and you constantly are using your powers of persuasion to motivate and to get these kids out there. It's not pretty in the mountains of Wales in December to get out there and do this stuff, but I did. And then you come to this country and you realize that all of those attributes, and then the polish of an English accent, albeit Liverpudlian, but an English accent for some reason would strike an American as you know what you're talking about. You're intelligent, you're educated, and sometimes you are, and sometimes nothing could be further from the truth. But you take stock of your attributes, and so I do not look at my 5 years as a PE teacher as a waste at all. I still draw from those experiences today. I draw from my experience of managing adults. I mean, hardcore coal miners and steel workers that would come in as a young lad behind the bar and listening to their conversations and engaging in their conversations, which lifted me at a conversational level at 12 years of age. Physical education all day long, motivating, cajoling, persuading, and then coming to America, struggling, and then figuring out, all right, I said, what you got? You got your English. You know how to manage people. You can persuade people. I'd never sold anything in my life before. In the same way, I've never run the world's biggest football club before. I mean, so these moments in your life, you draw back on your experiences of what you've done before. It's all intertwined. When we'll talk about this, when I got to Liverpool, I pulled so much from my video game experience of fan engagement, of data and analysis, all of the things that we take for granted now in video games, $200 billion industry. But still in football, it was a little, I'm going to say behind, but a little nascent because we needed to up our digital footprint as a global brand as we are. So long answer to your question, but that's where it's at.
No, that's fantastic. And I mean, I can definitely relate to the change in mindset that there is here because I'm from Northern Ireland. So accent is also fading slightly with the 8 years I've been here, but that idea of looking around in Northern Ireland and thinking is not, and again, not to look down on Northern Ireland at all, but like, is this where I want to spend the rest of my days? And what does the ceiling look like for me staying here with someone with ambition? And then it was a case of same thing, just get to America and then figure it out. Don't go to America with something lined up. Came over playing college football, but then it was struggling after that of let's make something work. With your, and we'll obviously, go in more detail of each step of it, but your changes throughout your career, there were a lot of moments where it was moving into a new industry or moving into a new side of something that required some risk, both of, self-belief, which is inherent in a lot of people from the UK, that cockiness that we all have a little bit of, but that self-belief when you channel it correctly. When you're making those decisions, to get into gaming, then to go and be the CEO of Liverpool and to go into these different realms, what did that decision-making process look like in deciding whether this was right? Was it a pros and cons list, or was it thinking about how this can tee you up for a next move? Take us through those steps.
Yeah, I mean, you always look at life as vision, which is your North Star, which is like, this is where I want to get to. And then you reverse engineer, all right, how am I going to do that? And so, one thing I left out, when I came back from Liverpool, I worked for Unity Technologies for 2 years. My boss at EA was Unity is a game engine company. And he said, we're developing volumetric capture to do 3D interactive broadcasting for sports. I'm going, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. So, but within 3 months, I am very much into the technology of volumetric capture, which is capturing data through camera systems and then bringing it back to life through regenerating those images, which you can actually manipulate. And so look, it's like every step of my career, there's like, what do I know about this going in? And it's healthy, I think, to have imposter syndrome. And there are many times I've had that in these, movements from one industry, PE teacher to coming over here and salesman, and from salesman to literally, a senior executive in a publicly traded American company. It's like, what do I know about the boardroom and P&Ls and finances and working at that level? Just getting into video games, period, knew nothing about video games. But within 90 days, I'm actually leading a press conference in San Francisco explaining how online gaming is going to change the way we think about video games in the future. Year later, I am testifying in the Senate in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the video game industry, defending us against attacks from senators and Congress that we're bad for society. It's a waste of time. It's creating issues in America's youth, all of this. And that's only 18 months after I joined the industry. So all of these things, but having that self-doubt is healthy because it's called imposter syndrome, is that I don't belong here. And you worry about what's also known, unfortunately named the Peter principle, which is you get promoted into obsolescence and you get promoted to where you can't actually function because you get on this organizational train that keeps popping you up into the next role, and all of a sudden you're incapable of doing that. And that's what's known as the Peter principle. And again, unfortunately named. I've avoided that, I think, for the most part throughout my life. But you have these moments in your life, and again, there's nothing wrong with it, where you have those quiet moments lying in bed at night or sat in the office on your own in the evening, go, I don't know what I'm doing right now, or what should I be doing right now? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you go in thinking you know what you know and don't have the self-reflection to look back and go, I'm not sure this is right, or I'm not sure what to do, or I'm not sure I'm in the right place right now, or that the company's in the right place. That's the introspective you need, rather than the ridiculous cockiness of, yeah, it's me, I'll get it, we'll sort it out. Yeah. No, so you need all of that introspection that everybody should have in those quiet moments in their life and I still have it today, right? It's like that, okay, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? What do I need to do right now? I've never been in this situation before, and moments like that. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
That's really behind or being stuck in whatever role that we're in, is really powerful to hear you say how important that having that self-doubt is, and knowing that you don't know everything and being nervous. That's something that I think a lot of people deal with, and a lot of people don't, like we were saying with social media, they don't realize that it happens to most people. And going the other way is how you don't really see success when you're trying to move forward. Understanding that you don't know things is an important thing to learn and grow as a person. One of the things that I picked up on as we've talked about your career for the last 20 minutes or so, you've had a lot of pressure in your career and how to deal with pressure, because it's not just being the CEO of Liverpool and trying to achieve success on and off the field, but being at the leading edge of the video game industry, being in the middle of the sneaker wars. But then on top of that, the pressure of taking that leap and moving to the United States without having a certain kind of possibility or realistic expectation of what you're going to do. All of that is a huge amount of pressure for someone to deal with. So, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but where did you deal with the most pressure in your career, and how did you deal with it?
The most pressure you'll always deal with is that you've got people's livelihoods and lives in your hands. And in particular, when your company is going through tough times, and at EA, we certainly did that. At Sega, absolutely, when we had to say goodbye to the Dreamcast and stop manufacturing, you're letting people go, what's known as a RIF, a reduction in force. And those are heart-rending moments in which you have to pull somebody into your office and, I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go. We can't afford to keep you anymore. And I've done that dozens, if not hundreds of times, all the way along. And those are difficult times because you're putting somebody's life and their wife and children, whatever, into turmoil, particularly if you hired them. And there's been so many instances where I did go out and hire somebody and then ultimately had to let them go again. Those are the most difficult moments. But I look back on that, and for the most part, if not 100% of those people have always done well. They just move on in their lives, and the experience that in my to allow me to sleep at night, the experience I gave them, whether it was at EA, whether it was Sega, whether it was Reebok, has, as I mentioned as we got going here, has served them well in their career later on. Once you have those brands on your resume, that attracts attention. And in today's world of LinkedIn, where AI is jumping in, looking for metadata, having those big brands pops your resume to the top. But yeah, that's always been the most difficult part for me is having to turn somebody's life upside down by letting them go. Not easy.
Yeah. And then the second part is, as you've been a leader in basically every company that you've worked for, and I guess it's always kind of been the same, but the way that you do it is different, of keeping everybody engaged and wanting to come and work and provide for the company. What are those important qualities that you've seen within yourself as a leader? And then what advice would you give to our audience about taking on those leadership positions and what they should try and do?
Best example I would give, David, is what happened at EA. We were going through a very difficult time as the video game industry, as music and movies had done, moving away from physical media, CDs, DVDs. In our case, Xbox discs, PlayStation discs. And we knew that we were on what's known as a burning platform. That, and this is 2008, 2009. And look, we're selling millions of discs. Madden, FIFA, Battlefield, Need for Speed. We're selling millions of these. But the internet, broadband speeds are getting faster. Hard drives are getting bigger. Memory storage on consoles is going from megabytes to gigabytes to ultimately a terabyte. And the writing was on the wall from the early days in that the lesson learned with music is that the industry is going to turn upside down. And we need to be ready. And so the courage that we needed to do was say, hey, retailer, Best Buy, Walmart, Target, GameStop, we'll keep selling your disc, but we're going to take your customer. We are going to deliver games on Tuesday morning at 12:01 a.m. to your hard drive of your customers, because they're multi-gigabyte hard drives now. And sure, you can sell your disc, but we're going direct, and we're going to rebuild our company to go direct. So I was chief operating officer by then, and my job was to convince everybody that was still there, because we'd let a lot of people go in advance of this. Warehouse people, salespeople, didn't need salespeople anymore. Operations that are involved in manufacturing, all gone. And so it was now network engineers and customer service to build direct, and legal, because we're now dealing with millions of people and hundreds of millions of dollars floating around in FIFA points and everything else that was going on. We were building small economy for a third world country in this. And so everything that happened to go with that. So I could see this fragmentation at EA, 8,000 employees. So I formed what I called the engine room. And I said, Monday morning at 9 o'clock, we're going to be in this conference room, and I'm going to be there with my direct reports. And any of you that don't report to me are quite welcome to come in, and we're going to continue to figure this thing out as we move away from being a manufacturer to a direct-to-consumer company. And the engine room went on for 2 years, and the group got bigger because they want to be a part of something that would take this company whose stock price at then $10.86, and we were in jeopardy, to where it is this morning at $130 a share. And look, and so it wasn't easy, and a lot of people lost their jobs as a result of this turmoil. But I saw my role just to coalesce everybody and say, all right, yeah, we got a problem. Let's get the coffee in, because we had a Starbucks in the building, which was great. And everybody come in, and this conference room, 9 a.m. every Monday, coming in. We're the engine room. We're the steam on the pistons. We're the grease on the wheels. We're on the gears. And this is what we're going to do. And it became a little bit that you were missing out if you weren't part of the engine room, even though in an organizational structure, a good chunk of those people didn't report to me, but they wanted to be part of the solution. And this is what they saw as something that could help this company get over that hurdle. And we did. We absolutely did.
Yeah, I mean, I think David and I were probably on the consumer end of all of that growing up, of the switch. Remember it vividly, like the switch to with FIFA, especially being our world, of switching to things like Ultimate Team and FIFA points becoming part of it, and spending money after you've bought the game being the first ever experience of that. And obviously at whatever age we were when we first experienced that, not understanding the business model behind it. But as we get older and now live in the Bay Area, and I live in Redwood City, right where EA is, and you used to spend a lot of your days. Now fully understanding, the last couple of years as we just dive into things like this and understanding it all, it's extremely impressive. And to know that you're behind all of that is even more impressive.
Well, there was a talent, and still is a talented team behind FIFA Ultimate Team in particular. And as consumers, you just take it for granted. The back end of that is immense and complex and global. And, we're fighting off state-sponsored hackers trying to get into our servers. We're building an economy that was floating tens of millions of dollars a day and trying to keep it secure. And the complexity of Ultimate Team, 15,000 players, you open your packs, and we had to keep everything secure. And then there's 2.5–3 million people playing concurrently around the world in 200 countries. Now, again, you log in, you play, you have fun, you're playing against somebody you don't know, and you take it for granted. The back end, what goes on there, huge. And to this day, I'm just in awe of the team that pulled all of that off.
No, I'm sure. And I think you'd mentioned, the idea of like a third world country, the revenue and the profit that some companies here in the States make is, bigger than the GDP of a lot of countries around the world. That when you're on the surface from the outside running a company, there's a lot more to it than just being in a boardroom making decisions. And right. I like that you brought up that fact of, being on the consumer end, we just see the finished product and we don't think what's behind it all. We've, of course, spoken with a lot of folks in the world of soccer and football who are doing that from a front office perspective. So pivoting to, and of course, having to jump over a lot of things, but pivoting to Liverpool. From the outside, Liverpool is Liverpool. And I think everyone has an idea more differently than when we speak to folks in USL, that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of Liverpool, of course. What were some things when you switched into that role? And again, you took a jump. You've never run a football team before. You've run different areas of football and things in it. What were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome through learning things for the first time? Any trial and error? I'm sure there was a team of advisories and everything to help you get through things, and Fenway, of course. But what were some of the big challenges you first overcame getting into the role?
Well, the biggest challenge was that even the owners of Fenway Sports Group were a little unclear on what the job description was, because we were rapidly moving at that point away from the traditional CEO who got very involved in transfers, got very involved in football itself, and to a business CEO that just ran the business and actually had nothing, if you will, to do with football. Now, it sounds a bit bizarre that the CEO of a football club has nothing to do with football, but the competencies and the expertise, you lay it out. I'm not going to go to Melwood at the time and tell Jurgen what he should be doing, and Pep Linders what he should be doing, and the entire staff there. My job was to create what I figured out was the virtuous cycle of football, which is your club is immense when I get there. There's no doubt about it. Look, my first game at Anfield was 1959. I was 4 years and I've old. And so I followed the club intensely and immensely since then. Um, and, you get there, and it's only when you get inside you understand what it takes to seamlessly pull off a football match on a Saturday afternoon at a stadium like Anfield. And also to be able to build the brand, if you will, of a global football club and managing the tension between the local fans and the global fans, making sure everything is safe. And for me, the virtuous cycle is, look, you start winning on the field and better sponsors start looking at you and they write bigger checks, and bigger checks allows you to buy better players, and better players win you more games, and winning more games brings even bigger checks in from sponsors and advertisers, and this virtuous cycle continues. And then you're smart, and nothing to do with me, but in the transfer market, and you go get your Virgil van Dijks and your Mohamed Salahs, who look like bargains now, right? When you look back at what we paid for them then, but it was huge amounts of money. Certainly in Virgil's case, as the world's most expensive defender. And you do that. And in the end, it boiled down for me. And I look back on it now, and I've just finished my autobiography, so it's all very fresh for me. But in the end, I said, all right, I have no idea, the paragraph, go be the CEO. I mean, it was a little more than that, but that was basically what that was. There were 800 people when I got there that worked for Liverpool Football Club that didn't kick a ball. I mean, just legal, HR, finance, marketing, operations, you name all of that. So I needed to build a culture. And it was a little fragmented. My predecessor had done a great job. Ian Eyre, who's now over here at Nashville, done a great job. But in that last 12 months, he had given his notice to the club, which was great because it allowed them to do a global search, and thank goodness found me. But I had to go back in and start rebuilding a culture. And then for me, it was 4 Cs. It was building that culture. We can talk about that. Supporting commercial, huge part of the business with Billy Hogan, now my successor, a CEO at Liverpool, and helping Billy and his team. Then it was community, which was huge. And in fact, that's probably number one. And the complexity of what community means at Liverpool Football Club is immense. And also civic. What Liverpool Football Club means to the city of Liverpool and Greater Merseyside is immense. And, my first question when I got there looking at this is, how much money do you think we bring in when we have a home game? And the response, my team would go, a lot. And I go, look, a lot's not a great answer. I'm a Silicon Valley guy. So I brought Deloitte in to do an economic impact report and then manage the civic relationships with the mayor and the chief of police and everything that we needed to the importance of Liverpool Football Club, and to a lesser extent Everton, was immense on the city itself. I mean, Liverpool is football and the Beatles. I mean, you ask anybody anywhere in the world, and that's what you get. And for us, the numbers that emerge for hotels and airports and restaurants and taxis and Ubers. I mean, you add all of that together on game day, and it was huge. And so we had this, and we managed our civic relationships very tightly because it didn't happen in a vacuum. A football match at Anfield, at that time, 54,000 people, it just needs a lot of people to make it all happen, and for people to be safe and enjoyable, get there, have a great time, and get back out down to the city was an immense undertaking every single home game. So that was what I figured out, and it's the 4 Cs. It's culture, it's community, it's civic, and commercial. And I built a manifesto for the club, and I said, look, and the one sentence I used, local heart, global pulse. That's what came to me, is that there is no club with a more massive local heart than Liverpool. I don't care who you are, and I'll die on that hill. But then from a global perspective, as I traveled the world, as I did, wherever I would go and meet with what's known as the OLSC, the official Liverpool Supporters Club, in some dank pub somewhere, Munich, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Dubai, Cape Town. I mean, wherever I was, I would go meet, and I would spend the evening with the official Liverpool Supporters Club. 60, 80, 100 people would come. and I would make a presentation to them about the values of the club and what we're about and what our objectives are. As I learned, very unusual for a Premier League CEO to do that. But as a Liverpudlian, I thought exactly what I should be doing. It's go talk to the people, So these are the things you learn, and these are the things that when you look at the situation, you go, I know what to do here, and I think this needs to be done. And look, at times I annoyed people. I was on social media and very engaged, and that was not well received in certain areas. I mean, statesmanlike, but I believed it was the right thing to do. And to this day, when I go back to Liverpool and people recognize me in the streets, they'll come up and they'll shake my hand because we're Scousers, and no issues going up to anybody and talking to them. And they don't say, thanks for winning the Champions League, thanks for being Premier League. No, they go, you made me feel closer to the club. And that's all I need. That's all I need when people say that.
That's awesome. That's something that we repeat almost every episode, is that when it comes down to it, when you're in the world of soccer, whether it's on the front office side and who you work with or the importance of the fans, essentially it all comes down to the people and how you impact people's lives and how they feel about what they're doing or what they're seeing on the field. And it's just kind of how you make people feel positively about the sport of soccer. So it's awesome to see that's just continuing. But one thing, and we really want to talk about your newest team that you're involved with for sure. So we've spoken to a number of people around the US that are in the front office side or on the ownership side of teams in the MLS, the USL, and just kind of growing our network and seeing what's going on in the American soccer landscape. But one really notable person we spoke to was Brett Johnson. He's the owner of Rhode Island and also as well as Ipswich Town. And he spoke incredibly highly of the sport's growth, in particular in the United States. So as someone who's been involved in the game globally from such a young age, and you've seen it grow across your entire career, what is your take on the American soccer landscape and the direction that it needs to go in both short and long term?
I'm probably unique. I'm sure I'm not, but I'm in my head, I arrived in this country in the mid-'70s, and I'm coaching soccer in Ohio. Parents knew nothing about it. People there, in fact, there was enough people who said, this is a communist sport. I always remember that comment, we shouldn't be doing, this is not what American kids should be doing. But we always said then, look, it's a multi-generational thing, that the game is multi-generational. Elsewhere in the world, what it's multi-generational means that you're, in my case, my dad, my granddad, and I think my great-granddad were Liverpool fans. You have no choice, right? It's not like you're simply going to go, yeah, sorry, Dad, I'm going to be a blue. It just doesn't work that way, right? Thank God. And separately, we always said in the 70s, and then as I got into the industry in the 80s, selling football boots, selling soccer shoes in East LA to the Mexican stores, and sitting down at this time in the morning and eating menudo as I'm trying to sell my Keegan Golds, and this is 40 years ago, is that we always said when the parents, and maybe even it's got to be the next generation, finally have kids so they can stand on the sidelines and not only tell them what they should be doing tactically, but imbue in them a love of the game, right? And have them, and then the growth of, look, you could never watch a game on television when I first came here. There just was impossible. There were no scores in the newspapers. I mean, we get the LA Times or whatever, and I was in Long Beach, the Press Telegram in Long Beach, and there's no scores. I had to save up my coins during the week to call my dad from a phone box on a Sunday morning. How did we do yesterday, Dad? And I always remember I had 2.5 minutes of pumping quarters, nickels, and dimes in for him to tell me how we did, who scored, and how the game went. And look, fast forward to today, and there's so many factors. And in the 90s, I was chairman of the Soccer Industry Council of America. I ran the entire industry of Adidas and Puma, Nike just coming in. Lotto Diodora, Goal, Brine, Mitre. I mean, all of these great old brands. And so what is that? 30 years ago, I'm running the industry trying to build participation and trying to figure out how and this is just as MLS is getting started, and trying to figure out where MLS goes and how we use this to bring generations through. MLS starts primarily, because the United States Soccer Federation had guaranteed FIFA that they would build a professional league in return for getting USA 94 World Cup. MLS had a tough couple of years, and you can thank people like Phil Anschutz and Lamar Hunt and the Robert Krafts of this world for believing in it and staying in it. But look, make no mistake, they primarily saw MLS as a second tenant in their NFL stadiums so that they could have not only their NFL team, but also have a MLS team and maybe bring a different fan group in and leverage and amortize their stadium costs. It's only when we started to get soccer-specific stadiums, then all of a sudden it grows. If you fast forward to today, because we can go on for hours in this, and it's Gen Z coming through that reject sitting down on the couch for 3.5 hours to watch an NFL game. Gen Z saying, baseball, don't get it, didn't play it. I played soccer all my life. The NCAA scene is powerful, albeit probably detrimental to full-on professionalism and the growth of the American player. You can point in the general population to Ted Lasso, welcome to Wrexham, Messi into Miami, and this belief that the game, whether it's because you can see the players, they're athletes, they're not wearing a helmet, and the multi-generational element of the quality now and the access. Watching the Premier League on NBC, who do a brilliant job, as you know, every game live across NBC, USA, Peacock, watching Champions League on Paramount Plus, watching the FA Cup and League Cup on ESPN Plus. We get better coverage of the game in this country than just about anywhere else because of the power of the streaming platforms and their recognition that soccer drives engagement of a particular demographic they want, younger players, the Hispanic, Latino community, all of that has all come together at this moment in time of the last 7 or 8 years. You add the World Cup coming here, FIFA Club World Cup this year, the World Cup next year, and it's this lightning in a bottle. Finally, after 40 odd years that I have witnessed that you now have this amazing opportunity for America to grow as a legitimate football power. Now, and USL, which we should talk about in our remaining few minutes here, has this amazing opportunity, as we've just seen from their announcement of going to go for a Division One league division. And the Division One naming is confusing me even when I say it out loud. And to have a league that plays, on a par from a quality perspective, theoretically, as MLS, but have an authentic league that is built on a business model structure very differently.
Definitely. The announcement of the Division One, I think, caught us all off guard. David and I had just finished up a podcast with Kevin Couture at the time, and it was like, oh, if only we learned about this a day earlier. But on that note, were you aware that there was going to be a Division One coming when you started Santa Barbara in the championship?
No, I wasn't. But look, you think it through at a macro level, and you think what the opportunity USL has with the very educated American soccer fan at this point, who has enjoyed for a decade now watching the game, and most importantly, I guess, watching promotion and relegation and the drama that surrounds that. As American sports fans, I'm a Red Sox fan, so there are times when come July, we're out of it and we're starting to unload our players. Every game, you still got 50, 60 games to play, but it doesn't matter anymore because you're 27 games out of the wild card or whatever. It's a different thing. Promotion, relegation, European spots, as you guys know, add so much drama and so much to play for, even to the final weekend of a 38 game season plus all of the games you play in cup competitions. And still, most of those teams, whether it's fighting for the title, fighting for Champions League spots, fighting for Europa League spots, fighting for Europa Conference spots, fighting against relegation, the great majority of that league on that final Sunday in May are still playing for something after 10 months. And I think that the Wrexham documentary, Rob and Ryan, who I helped get going early on because of my Wrexham roots, have played into that enormously and probably educated, broader American sports fans of the lure of promotion and relegation. And now, whether we can pull it off in this country, we shall see. It is completely contrary to everything American sports have been built on, which is stability and wait till next year. And so, and obviously it's a franchise system that is different than what you have anywhere else in the world. But we need a pyramid. We absolutely need a pyramid that young players, and when I got to Santa Barbara, and you start talking to young players and they go, what do you want to do? I want to play for the LA Galaxy. I want to play for LAFC. I want to play for the San Jose Earthquakes. It's like, why do you want to play for Santa Barbara? Well, obviously there's no team. And so you build, as I did, with a number of people who believed, as I believe, that this is a great opportunity to build a community-based football club in a city and a county of Santa Barbara County that plays soccer. And that's pretty much all they play. There's been no American football played on the campus of UCSB where we will be playing since 1987. It's a soccer-specific stadium, Harder Stadium. Tremendously well-integrated community, Hispanic and white together, that have grown up from multi-generations, deep Spanish roots, and hence our colors of the terracotta of the Spanish architecture and the midnight blue of the gorgeous skies we get at night. And all coming together with St. Barbara, a rarity to have a woman on the crest of a men's football club from the beginning, in our crest and in our brand and everything we stand for. So that's been the kind of journey of the labor of love that I've had for the last couple of years on trying to get this club up and running. And we can now see March of 26 is very much in our sights.
Fantastic. I mean, 26 in general for the sport has so much to look forward to. I think the final thing I'd love to just ask before we wrap up is, this is your first chance to start something from scratch, from a clean slate. You don't have to come in and restructure or change a culture. Having worked with so many phenomenal leaders, seeing, Klopp and working with Bill Gates and everyone else whose name we might not know, you have the opportunity to create a culture from the ground up. What are some of those key things you're looking to build culture-wise at Santa Barbara as you start and push on for what will be a multi-generation club, hopefully?
Yeah, I mean, the thing you need to do is you need to be the guy that says, we can do this. You need to be the person that when all of the naysayers, and there were plenty of those, that didn't want to, you assess your community. It's a wonderful community, but it's relatively non-progressive in Santa Barbara. We love the fact that, there's no high-rise buildings. We love that it's pretty exclusive. And the mountains come to the beach. I'm sure you've both been there. And it's like, there's not a lot of real estate there. So you've got to explain and you become this missionary for the game and for your club with all of the civic bodies, from the mayor to the Chamber of Commerce, Visit Santa Barbara, to the university itself, who've never done anything like this. And you have to be literally that missionary, the rather, I don't want to say eccentric, but the guy that goes, yeah, we can do this. And everybody that will say, well, I don't think you can, because here's all the reasons you can't. Well, you just have to plow through those. And it will be a fine day when that referee's whistle goes in March of 26 and we're there at Harder Stadium, hopefully a pretty full stadium, and that first ball is knocked into the box somewhere, and sense of anticipation, and I'll look back at what it took to get there. From when I say a clean sheet of paper, it was a clean sheet of paper with a bunch of names on, and I went Santa Barbara Sky, and a lot of people, oh, what does that mean? And I'm a marketer. I said, it doesn't mean anything yet until you make it mean something. right? And, I always remember saying, I'd hate to be in the room when somebody said, Google, there's a great name for our multi-billion dollar. So it's like, the name it's not immaterial, but the name is an empty vessel until you create your brand around it, And so and that's what we've done with our colors and our linkage to St. Barbara and the style. People love our crest and the brand positioning we've done. All of that, I'll be long gone, but this legacy that I hope I leave is that 20, 30 years from now, as we go into our 30th anniversary, that it'll still be that same crest and same colors. And, maybe somebody pauses and look back and says, how did we get here? And when I was at Liverpool, we leverage heavily our past. We stand on the shoulders of giants, we always said. And whether that goes back to Bill Shankly and goes even deeper back to the formation of the club and actually playing at Anfield, which was originally Everton's home, if you know the history of Liverpool, and we leveraged that a lot. And the stadium was built to leverage the history of the football club, which people revere and love and gave it substance that maybe other football clubs don't have.
That's amazing. And it's very reassuring. Again, I've mentioned this a couple of times with folks like Brett. It's reassuring that you're one of the individuals leading this drive for the game in this country. Obviously, it's a big part of both of David and I's lives. But Peter, this has been phenomenal. Again, we could speak for hours and hours, and if we had 10 hours, I don't think we'd get through everything. We'd love to get through with you. So can't take out any more of your time, or we'd stay here for days. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us, sharing your insights with us, your journey. Of course, anyone who isn't familiar with you, there's a lot of things out there like your TED Talk to get the run through, and everyone needs to go watch the South Park clip. And we didn't even mention that's a funny one that everyone should check out. But Peter, thank you for sharing everything with us today. It's been phenomenal to hear from you.
My pleasure, lads. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching this episode of Off the Pitch. Don't forget to drop a follow or subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening from. That helps us bring stories like these to your ears each and every week. And if you have a minute, leave a review as well, as that helps us grow the Off the Pitch community and bring even more exciting guests on. See you in the next one.